Start recording. Okay, hi everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of Asura's Bride, or Ashura's Bride, however we pronounce it. And today we are co-hosted with Elizabeth, Rissa, and Chelsey, and we're going to introduce ourselves along with a fun fact. So my fun fact is that I grew up with 3 languages simultaneously: Hebrew, which is because my mother is Israeli and spoke it to us; English, because my dad is American; and Yiddish, because the whole community spoke Yiddish, so it was just in the background all the time. So I was very lucky to have that experience because it helped me learn more languages later on.
Wait, so how many languages do you know now?
I learned Russian for 1 year in high school, but I don't know much of it. I can just read a little bit of the script, and I remember words like karandash, okolo, ya ne znаю ničeho. And then I learned French for 2 more years in high school, plus the first year that we had to catch up. And I do keep up with French because I read stuff in French, and I always put Netflix movies on with French subtitles. So, and then Dutch, a little bit of Dutch because my husband is Dutch, and it's very similar to like Yiddish and English put together. So I can basically understand what I hear. And then once I'm in Holland for a few weeks, I can speak like a very basic Dutch.
Europe.
Yeah.
Some days I feel like I can barely speak English, so.
Okay, who's going next?
I'll go. So I'm part Islander, but I am allergic to pineapple. So everyone makes fun of me for this, that an Islander is allergic to pineapple. And this is something that happened when I was young, where I kind of noticed, but then when I was older, I'm like, maybe it's just, a pet peeve or like something, like I just didn't like pineapple. I took a piece of fresh pineapple, bit into it, and my throat started to so I learned the hard way. My instinct, it was my body was telling me, I didn't listen. So don't play
so
with
Rissa, when you say Islander, what do you mean by that? Because you did mention earlier, and I wanted to follow up on that, so now's a good time.
Yeah, so I am part Chamorro, which is from Guam, which is a U.S. territory. That's also where a lot of military, it is a military establishment essentially on Guam as well. But yeah, I'm part Chamorro, but funny enough, that's actually not a majority of what I am. The brown shows, which I love. Yes. But I'm actually a bunch of things. I am French, I am Italian, I am also Irish and Scottish, and like I have a lot of mix of like recently descended like immigrants to America, like not too far back. So I just joke like I'm everything. I'm like basically what America is. You're just like from everywhere.
Oh, that is so cool.
That is really cool.
All right, well, I'll go next. I'm Elizabeth. My fun fact is that I have off screen right here in my living room, you can see like one. I have lots of houseplants, probably 5 dozen-ish last time I counted. So, I have some die and I bring in more. Usually 1 dies, and then that means I can justify buying like 3. So, I write on AO3 as Begonia Rex, which is named after that plant right there. That's a begonia. It's like 3 feet tall. So
I just connected that.
Yes.
Your plants are great. So now my brain is like, oh, sorry.
Girl, because people ask, like, how'd you come up with your name? And it's like, well, you know that scene in Anchorman where like Steve Carell is like, I love lamp. And he's like, you're just looking at things and saying you love them, don't you? No. It's like, yeah, Elizabeth needed to come up with a username and was like, the begonia used to literally be right here. So I was like, Begonia Rex. Great. That's my username.
So did you help Chelsey? Chelsey, in stages, you were the one that has like Tora going to the plant stuff to buy her plants, right? Was that in your story?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering, did you help her out, Elizabeth, with that, or was it all your own?
Oh, no. Chelsey's way into plants too. She actually has her own plant room.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mine are just all over the house because I don't have pets, or kids. So
sounds ominous, though.
Lots of plants.
Yes, the plant room.
Yeah. When we moved into our new house, we had this whole room open, bright windows, perfect natural lighting. And Travis walks in, my husband, and he's like, "Yeah, this is your plant room." Yeah, it is. It's like, glad you agree with my decision.
Question for both of you: who waters the plants when you go on vacation, though? What happens?
You just water them really well. You only need to water them like once a week.
Yeah, I'll say we haven't been anywhere, I think, over you know, like stayed anywhere for over a week, at least not like recently.
Mhm.
But if we did, my cousin is really big into plants, so she'd come over and water them and take care of the cat. But yeah, I say, yeah, just give them a really good bath before
Or
you
you bury them in the backyard because they're dead. So I guess
Yeah, that
so you just get a new one.
My dad would probably come over and water them for me if I needed to, because like some of the plants I have are actually like babies that he started, and then he's like, here, have plants.
So Chelsey, what's your fun fact?
I'm Chelsey. I'm trying to think of when it was now. It's like maybe 2013 or 2014. I finally went to Ireland with a friend. Rissa reminded me. She said that she was Irish, and I changed my fun fact in my head real quick. But I went to Ireland. We went to let's see, we landed in Dublin, drove 2.5 hours to this private villa, ended up in Cork. Oh gosh, we went all over the place. We were a bunch of different places. Got pulled over by a police officer. Yelled at me for driving on the wrong side of the road.
Whoops.
Did he really yell? Did he really yell, or was
Yelled
he
at me, and I was so startled. He was, you know, in khakis and driving this like blue hatchback behind me, and I'm jet lagged driving 2 hours, and he rolls up and he's like, hey, you know, how's it going? And he just starts yelling at me. It's like, my dad is a police officer here in the US. I'm like, no, we don't talk to each other that way. So immediately I'm just like, dude, I'm American. I'm stupid. I have no idea what I'm doing here. He's like, oh, okay.
I don't want to be yelled at in Irish. I love their accents. But
It was
me
pretty
fetishizing
great.
an accent, but like a part of me would be like, "Oh, hello, officer." They'd be like, "Nope."
Yeah. I was like, yeah, hey, how's it going? And he started screaming, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm American. Literally not even here for 2 hours. It's like, I'm stupid. I don't know what I'm doing here. He was pretty forgiving after that. But other than that, it was a pretty,
from there. There's
that was
things you're not gonna know.
my favorite place I've ever been. It was a dream to be able to go there. So
I actually have I had tickets for Holland that I had pushed off 2 summers in a row. I had bought them like 2.5 years ago already. I don't know, a long time ago. And I pushed it off 1 year because my husband had an accident right before we were supposed to go. Last year because of Corona. So this year I rebooked it. Hopefully we'll go, but I booked it to Dublin this time. And I want to travel from there to Holland, where my husband's family is, and all around. We'll see. Hopefully we'll go.
yeah, oh yeah, I say it's wonderful. Yeah, you'll love it there.
Ireland's gorgeous. I've gone to, and I love it.
Have you?
So, and especially if you drive. If you drive yourself and not just go to the touristy spots, especially like, I'm going off way too much, but like if you go to like the 𝗵𝗵𝗃, like all of that, and you drive yourself, you just get a way different experience, and it's relatively easy to drive there. Like it's not like too.
Yeah, it was.
So,
yeah,
and
my
roundabouts
issue
are
was on
great.
the interstate. It was not knowing the difference between like the lanes, as opposed to like I could drive on the public, like, you know, streets just fine. It was the interstate that I got in trouble.
The country roads, by the way, are so narrow. That's like where it gets like a little crazy too.
Stone
But
walls.
I digress.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Yeah. Well, now we're about to travel to another exotic place somewhere in Asia. So yeah, let's
Good
get into it.
transition.
That was great.
I know. I feel like one of my jobs as a host is to transition from chit chat back to the episode.
Right.
Okay, and I think Elizabeth, you're starting us off, right?
I think that was, yeah, I can start.
Yeah,
I forgot who was supposed to start.
So yeah, we're on episode 4. It's called By the White Lake. And I just have to say again, I love this style. I like the art style that she did in this. Like, it's so painterly, and I live in Minneapolis, and the Minneapolis Institute of Arts has like a huge Asian art collection, and so like, having spent many hours looking at like ink brush paintings, I'm just like, oh, she just nailed this so much. I love it. So like, we start with like birds, and then and then you've got tree branches and what looks like, kind of hazy mountains. And then we kind of come into Yuwa's feet just kind of wiggle, 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 coming off the horse. And then she lands and Ulaan says, "No help needed, I see. You're pretty good, schooled in horseback riding." And Yuwa says, "You know, back home I hunt and kill, and I'm very skilled with a bow and arrow. I could put an arrow right through here if I wanted to." And she pokes Ulaan in the chest. And he says, "You know, I live for the thrill, and this definitely thrills me." She covers his mouth. "Kindly keep a distance from me. Your close proximity is not wanted."
This is hilarious because, like, first of all, I like the fact that he's admiring her skill. You know, obviously, like, this is not something that every female he comes across can do. And then Yuwa just flings it right back in his face and it's like, "I could do this, I could do that. I could actually kill you."
But it's like song like, "I can do anything better than you." But yeah, like, "I can do anything better. Yeah, I guess I can." So it's like the dynamic, but it's really flirty. Like, she's not afraid to get in his face too. Like, she's really like, you know, like, can't push me around. And I was gonna say the same, like, the about the art style. Every panel looks like a painting. Like, it just looks that detailed and gorgeous. And that's why I even got to know Lily Dusk, is because I was just looking at webtoons on the usual, and then I like stopped here because the art was so beyond what most of the artists on the site, you know, were at, and in different style too. So I agree. Like, you could just like look at the art and just be like, appreciate just for that.
So did you find Asura's Bride first, or did you find MPL first?
So Asura's Bride, like, I was here in the old days. Like, I've been around for a minute. But no, yeah, I found it when Asura's Bride was still coming out with chapters. Like, when it was.
Oh, wow.
And I just remember just like when Ulaan and Yuwa, when they look at each other, that moment, I just like took my breath away, not just for the cheesy romantical sense, but the artwork and the expression and everything. It was like too gorgeous. Like, it was like, and my addiction started then, and I've never recovered. Hello, I'm Rissa. I am a recovering, not wanting to recover.
I know, it amazes me. I always wonder, like, I mean, I wonder to myself, like, will I ever burn out? Will I ever be like, "Oh, I'm not interested"? But like, now I've been rereading Midnight Poppyland every time I, you know, for like the Midnight Poppyland Seeds group, I post like twice a week the episode review, and every time I do it, I'm like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." So still in love.
Yeah, I'm actually working on a big tattoo in homage to Midnight Poppyland and writing fanfic. So it'll be my second biggest tattoo when it's done.
Yes, I remember.
And
you talked about it.
It will have a peony in it, of course, and poppies.
Oh, and a tiger butterfly, right? Was I correct?
Yeah, 2 tiger swallowtail butterflies, because there's the yellow variant that we see, but there's also like a black version that I really like too. So.
Did you say peonies? I heard P and E, and I was really confused.
Peony, like the flower.
P-E.
Peony, like the flower on Ulaan's throat.
And okay.
On Tora.
Or peony as a Poppy and Erdine, or, you know.
Yeah, I was like, that's her shit. Poppy and Erdine. That's the real shit. I'll find out later. Anywho.
Though, like, you're talking about the art, like, one of the things that grabbed me actually with Midnight Poppyland and then Asura's Bride is actually the tattoos. Because I'm pretty into that and like did a lot of research in college. And so like, it always kind of annoys me when like people sort of just like put them on and I'm like, they like curve around things, guys. So like when I first pulled up Asura's Bride and I was like, oh, cool. He has like this really awesome like peony tattoo on his throat. I just like, that was kind of actually what like grabbed my attention right away because it just looks really cool.
The dimensions, like the actually going around the arm and stuff instead of just like, on. Yeah, definitely. Anatomy. Anatomy. Speaking of anatomy, I'm like looking at this panel right now, like, where's that finger pointing?
And she's touching him. Do you notice, by the way, there's parallelism because Poppy at the Alice's restaurant, when Tora was talking about Jacob and he was getting angry, Poppy, grabs his mouth and she's like, oh, other people's feelings, thoughts are their judgments, or whatever, are theirs to keep. And Yuwa does the same thing to Ulaan here. And, they, both of them basically just met, right? I mean, and they're already comfortable enough with like touching each other in a pretty intense and kind of like cheeky way, right? So here, there Poppy was doing it as like, oh, like kind of like giving him an emotional, like a very wise statement. Here she's like, shut up, like stop teasing me. But he has that same teasing demeanor and like the same like sexual flirtation that Tora does. Tora's always making sexual innuendo jokes. And here Ulaan's doing the same thing. It's like, oh, your headstrongness and your ability to kill me thrills me.
Must be genetic.
Yeah, I was gonna say the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Yeah, they're the ancestors, it's just, it runs in the family, the flirtation. Like that's still canon that they're just, these are the ancestors of Poppy and Tora. So
well, not Poppy, but yeah, but Tora.
I guess not Poppy. That'd be a little weird because then it's like, oh.
Not necessarily. It's so many generations later. At some point, we're all related because we're all from the same ancestors because it's so many generations afterwards. But yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. Speaking of, flirtation, Ulaan's like, I'm going to the riverbank to clean up, and don't try to get away with Kara. She'll throw you off in an instant. See ya. And he's thinking to myself, she's so serious, so fun to tease. And he was like, I don't believe you, liar. And then the horse just kind of has like, like the evil eyes.
Why does he have the evil eyes? That's a good point.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever really noticed that before.
Yeah, it's like the...
Oh, yeah.
Glowing like you can't trust me.
Is it related to the curse? Is the horse part of the curse?
No, I think it's more just like, the horse is like, yeah, no, I will throw you. Don't even try.
Try me.
Right. But, it speaks to Ulaan's recognition of Yuwa's independent spirit and the fact that she will try to run away.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and it's just like, her personality, she is so like bold because like, she's in the middle of the wilderness with this guy who like rescued her, but then took her prisoner and isn't telling her anything. But is also like flirting with her. And she's just like lobbing it back every time. Like zero fear of this guy.
That's what I love about those panels is her, I could put an arrow through your heart if I wanted to. And she steps really close to him and he gets close to her. And then she's like, no, back off. But she initiated it.
That's funny. She actually also taps his
down
armor
immediately.
The push and pull. Cupid be like,
exactly.
oh, like, arrow through the heart? Let's do this.
He actually taps his chest because you see the tuck. So she not only got up in his face, she also like, touched him.
Yeah. Yeah. But she's like, you need to back off. You were in his face first. You started this.
Yeah. Don't start when you're not prepared to finish.
Well, they'll get plenty close later on.
Yeah.
So then we get a little break and Yuwa says, phew, held that in for so long I almost burst. And she's walking out of the woods. And then she says, oh, he removed his armor. He almost looks like a civilian like that. And then she kind of has this like sort of surprised, taken aback look. And goes, huh? Wait a minute. And we see Ulaan kneeling down by the lake. And the next panel, he's flicking her cloak over a branch. She says, that's my cloak. You saved it from the bandits. It'll take a few hours to dry, but at least it's not covered in bandit blood and grime now. I'm guessing you would rather freeze than put that dirty cloak on. She thinks to herself, well, he's not wrong to say that.
You know what I thought? That now that I see when it first says, oh, he removed his armor, he almost looks like a civilian in that, and then you see her wide-eyed glance. So I see now that the wide-eyed glance is actually for her, the cloak, but it reminds me, if we're going to make another reference to Midnight Poppyland, of how Poppy was surprised when she first saw Tora wearing those shorts and she saw that tattoo on his leg. And she was like, oh, wow, this is another side of him that I haven't seen before. So it kind of reminded me of that.
It does.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Right. I'm
And I
getting
think, like,
hair
go ahead.
envy. So sorry. Yeah. So sorry. All I'm saying is hair envy. Like when you see him back in the lake and his gorgeous hair is just like I'm like, hey.
See,
much.
Tor kind of ruined that for me because he's like, when they're at Regina's Peak and he's making that joke about the king with like super long hair. And he's just like, yeah, what did his queen have to do? Hold it up for him when he went to take him dump? And I'm just like, well, thanks for that, Tor, because now that's what always pops into my mind now whenever I see like Ulaan's long hair. So it's like, yeah, how do you go to the bathroom with that?
I've said this story on the podcast before, but my husband, when he was a teenager, had really, really long hair, which he has naturally blonde hair because he's Dutch, but he dyed it black because he was a goth teenager. And he said he cut it off when at one point he went to the bathroom, and when he got up from the toilet, the end of his hair was wet. And that was when he cut it off. Yep. And I wish I had seen him with his long hair because I love long hair.
Oh, me too.
But now he won't grow it out for you.
So after 11 years of marriage, he is finally, and 11 years of begging, he is finally growing it. But like now it's like, I don't know, up to here. You know, he has like the 90s hairstyle now. And let's just wait and see. Let's just see. That's all. I literally praise him every single day for his hair. And then like I'll stop and I'll be like, oh, you're so gorgeous. Like I'll just do that. And he doesn't get to see, like if someone did that to me, I would be like, that's great. And I would continue doing it. I don't think it works so effectively on him. Like, I don't know if that's such a motivator for him, but one can hope.
See, I'm on the opposite end, and I was like nagging my husband for like 3 months to get a haircut. And I'm just like, I want to see your eyes. You have eyebrows. I want to see those. So, yeah.
So, and also like the fact that he saved her cloak, that was you know, considerate of him. Also, she must be freezing. Like obviously he has his warm armor, so he's not completely insensitive to her needs. Like emotional, I think, because the cloak probably is emotionally comforting for her, and physical, the fact that she won't be freezing with her open, you know, dress.
Yeah, the fact that he took the time to scrub all those stains off of a pure white cloak.
While his outfit is quite dirty.
Yeah, I was like, he's kind of a gentleman.
Yeah, and I think you're continuing, right?
Yep.
I'm here.
And then it shows there's like a split in his shirt across his shoulder, bloody bandages. And Yuwa says, wait, there's blood all over you. And he says, don't worry, I'm not that weak. None of it is mine. And she's like, except for that giant bandage wound, it's soaked in blood. And she's pointing at it. In the next panel, she looks pretty concerned. It looks quite bad. He must have taken painkillers to suppress the pain. And there's just a panel of him looking over at her. And then he shoves a cloth into her dirty face. And she says, "Wah!" He says, "Why is your face still so dirty? Didn't you go off to tend to yourself?" She says, "The handmaidens have always done this for me, so I don't know how to. I just went for number 2, that's all. Stop moving." And he's wiping at her face. She says, "The truth is, I didn't clean my face because he might find out that I'm not eldest sister, because I'm not even close to how beautiful she is." And then it shows him kind of more gently wiping at her face, cleaning it, and her eyes are closed. She says, "But this feels kind of nice. He's surprisingly gentle." And Ulaan says, "So," and it shows him looking down at her. "This is the face of the famed beauty of Shan, huh?" And she's thinking, please don't notice. Please don't notice. And little 𝗵𝗵𝗱, nervous, being caught. And it shows him looking at her again, and he says, "Not bad."
Ooh.
Yeah.
So I want to go. So one of the things that I noticed was when, first of all, did you notice how like Ulaan is so macho that he's like, he can't admit that like he might have a wound. And the second that she points out, "Yes, boy, you do have a wound," he's like, "Why is your face dirty? Let's not talk about me."
Yeah. Let's talk about what's wrong with you.
Yeah. No, I'm fine. It's totally fine.
Your face is dirty. Just a little blood.
I like the humanizing that she told him she went was going to the bathroom, was going number 2.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't actually happen in a lot of webtoons. They like to pretend like poop and bodily functions like that don't happen.
Yeah.
But like, so that was nice because it's like, wow, that's kind of also an intimate level to be so candid with someone. Like, yeah, I was just, you know, taking a dump in the woods. That's love, right? Like, you can tell someone.
I already feel open enough with you to tell you what I just did.
Yeah, and it was trying to distract just a teeny bit, but it's funny. She kind of mentioned it. I mean, I just like as we said, how comfortable they are to communicate in a fashion that almost like friends would. And I think they realize it, but don't at this point, which it starts to speed up as the story goes. Like, he's already kind of doting on her, and she's already kind of being like her best silly self, which is great.
Yeah, like they do not like stand on any kind of ceremony around each other. Like they're just like, I mean, you know, they met under odd circumstances, but like she's very like antagonistic to him, where it's like, you know, she's a princess and she's supposed to be, you know, demure and like probably, you know, very graceful and quiet and not talk to people. And she's just like, you know, always got something to say to him, and he just goes right back. Like they have a really good like banter back and forth pretty much right away.
Yeah, and Yuwa, I keep mixing up like combining their names, but yeah, Yuwa is concerned for him. You know, she asked herself, she's like, oh, it looks bad. I must have taken painkillers, which I highly doubt he took any painkillers given his macho-ness. He's like, I don't need painkillers. That's for wimps. And the expression that he gives back to her, I think, to me, shows that he notices her concern and appreciates it. Like, he has this little smile playing on his lips, and his face is a little softer and gentler. So to me, it seems like he's melting a little bit and like really appreciating the fact that she is concerned over him. That's what I see, at least.
Yeah.
Well, and he probably, you know, we know later that he probably doesn't really get people being concerned about him in that way. Like they expect him to be tough and not admit weakness.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now he's, you know, showing concern for her back, which, yes, we know he's doing it like to distract from himself, but it is sweet of him, you know, the fact that he's cleaning her face off. But he also does that in a kind of aggressive way. He's like, he cleans her face gently, but he accuses her at the same time, which is also, again, the push and pull. You know, when a couple gets together, you can't, most people at least, they don't like to rush in and say right away, oh, I love you, I like you, which obviously I don't think they're up to that stage anyway, but you know, you don't want to show your cards right away. You want to still, you know, be self-sufficient. So he's being nice to her, but also, you know, being teasing of her at the same time. So to not be too close.
They're just so freaking pretty. Look at their eyes. Look at Yuwa's freaking doe eyes, and then Ulaan with his red, beautiful ruby eyes. And I was just like, you're both too effing pretty. Like, I just, like, freaking Yuwa's like, I'm not as pretty as my sister. I'm like, what?
And I'm like, what does your sister look like that
oh my God.
you are not considered as pretty? Like, she is stunning. She is so pretty.
I mean, I'm glad, like, she's not like, I mean, she can be confident in her looks. Like, I'm not about girls not knowing that they look good, because I think that's a little silly. People can be self-aware, but I like, I mean, it does add a bit of cuteness to the scene, but when I first read it, I'm like, are you kidding me right now?
I really want to know what your sister looks like. Because, yeah.
Right. So yeah, so she says now, you know, wait, what? And like this panel where she's finally clean, and yeah, she has those gorgeous gray eyes, and his hand is on her cheek very gently, by the way. Did you notice that?
For like multiple panels too.
Yes.
And then her hand came up like a few panels back too. So like he's cleaning her face, and she like it kind of just instinctively like brings her hand up to touch him. Yeah, so he's just standing there like holding her face, and she's like touching his hand. But yeah, just that like just the touch, like without even thinking.
And then there's a couple of panels where that just show her shock. There's the one, like you say, where her hand is on his arm, and he's still touching her face and looking down at her from his great height, because it's the same dynamic, very tall, very short. And she's just looking up at him like completely, he has let go at this point, but just with his like wide eyes, and she's like really, really looking intensely at him. And he reacts by dumping with this, oh my gosh, I think I'm falling for her. What is happening? Kind of expression. He even has one eye missing. He's blinded by love.
He's got his little blush.
Yeah, the little tiny baby blush.
Oh dear. And what does he do immediately? He can't face it. He runs away. He's like, turns around, finish up yourself. I'm going to get food. And he, still has that blush. He has a little sweat mark. Yuwa is, a little surprised at this sudden turning away because she has these question marks around her. And yeah, I think she feels a little deprived. But yeah, he's not ready yet to admit to feelings for her. And then he's like, don't look at me like that. God damn it. He thinks to himself because he is affected by that feeling.
Like must maintain, smirky, flirty, macho personality. And then he's just like, cute girl looked at me.
Oh, poor fella.
Who's the captor really in this situation?
Yeah, exactly.
The tides are turning. Or the tables. What is the phrase? I don't know, guys. I just watched it.
Yeah.
The tides? What is it?
The tables are turning, you mean?
The tides
Tides are changing.
tides are changing.
There is an expression with tides, but
The tides are
changing.
The tides are changing, yeah. So you could say the tides are turning.
I like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Tides
maybe
are
they do
receding.
I like
whirlpool, man.
I recently learned that not everybody has the same phrase for, when somebody's thinking or talking about you. Like in Midnight Poppy Land, we see like Tora and Poppy both sneeze when they're like being talked about or thought about. And that's like more of a specifically like Asian cultural thing. Whereas like what I grew up with is we would say like, oh, were your ears burning earlier because I was talking about you. And I found out recently, like not everybody knows what were your ears burning mean, because like one of my sisters has a boyfriend who grew up in like rural Indiana, and I said that to him and he just didn't react. And I was like, wait, do you not know what that means? And he's like, no, I've never heard that before. And I was like, that means we were just talking about you right before you came in. So yeah, it's funny that like culturally there's different things. So
Yeah. Plus, I feel like I'm dyslexic. I'm a lot of things. Like I'll mess up. Like I create my own language in my brain sometimes, and it'll just come out. But I like that too. Honestly, like there are certain Asian. If you read a lot of like manga or manhwa, there are certain cultural things that you'll see time and time again are used to. What I find interesting is people who are reading both these for the first time. They're not used to the similar like tropes that maybe us like so much are. We're like, oh, we know what this is, and people are just like, what is this? Like, why is it this way? And it's because they're, if you've read so much, you get used to that kind of like how they tell their stories, how they kind of show a girl likes a guy. But Lily Dusk is different because she is more westernized and she's her kind of own thing, where there is that little kind of nod to the Asian culture, but then it like develops into its own thing, which I think you see later, especially in the mature conversation, which I'll bring up again and again, is like the conversation isn't just like, you have beautiful eyes, thank you, let's go, like,
yeah, exactly. I was actually just talking about this earlier in a group chat that Chelsey and I were in, where we're saying that, one thing about Lily Dusk is she is working with tropes that are common in manga and anime, but it's like what she does with them is really interesting. So as somebody who's been reading, manga and comics since I was like 5, there's all this these visual cues and visual shorthand that you pick up over time. And so you kind of expect things to go a certain way. And like Lily Dusk really plays with that a lot, like particularly more in Midnight Poppy Land. But even in Asura's Bride, with like kind of the expectations that we have of who, Yuwa should be based on like how we first see her, and like who we're expecting Ulaan to be emotionally. And so like the fact that like you know, later on he cries, like that's kind of subverting the expectations that you would normally have with a character like that. And so like I really appreciate that she plays with the tropes, she plays with the expectations, but then she just completely like surprises us because we're going into this expecting, oh, it's going to be like this, and she's like, haha, I know that, so I'm going to play with that, which is really fun. As like somebody who's really widely read, and like I worked at a bookstore for like 5 years, it is very rare that I'm like surprised by a story, but like I so appreciate that like Lily Dusk continually surprises me with her storytelling, which is really fun because it's like I love not knowing where the story is going. Like I love being surprised and just like going along for the ride. And so like even with a very like much more traditional like Asian influence story with like Asura's Bride, she's still playing with those expectations and those tropes in a fun way.
Awesome. Yeah.
I agree completely. It's just like totally fun to see where she's gonna take something. And to be honest, I think that's why people follow her, is because she gives you more than you were ever expecting. So you go into it kind of like, it's kind of gonna be the same old, be a quick fix to my like thirst. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I need more. What is this? She's like, it's like, it's especially this genre, there was an oasis of women who were probably, I talked about this at why this speaks to people probably in middle age, which I'm talking about, not actual middle age, like 29, 30s into 30s and such, is because it's not typical. Even this story itself, with a vulnerable, like he's not a typical jerk character. Like he's not following all the tropes that you would see. And as the story goes on, you'll see more of kind of like more his personality and responsibilities. And like that is the demographic that she is, like, who needed something like this, who was like stuck in like the high school, and I keep saying this, but it's true, stuck in the high school webtoons, kind of like the very thinly layered, not too much depth characters. And then Lily Dusk comes along, who's like, beautiful art, beautiful story, mature feelings, mature things, very sexy things on her Patreon. Shameless plug. Shameless plug, guys. Go to her Patreon. And it's just really, it's really satisfying. So sorry to segue too much, but I'm sure this will be brought up in other episodes by people in different ways. Because as I said, for me, it's something unique than just what you keep reading time and time again. That's all.
Yeah, well, and I mean, she moves her stories along. Like, I see people comment a lot about how, like, you know, Asura's Bride was very short, but she moved the story very quickly in a way that felt fairly natural to me. Like, and even in Midnight Poppyland, I mean, we got our first kiss in what, episode 29? I don't remember right now off the top of my head, but like the fact
35, 47, 58.
Oh, thank you. But the fact that like even the fact that people were so surprised by their first kiss, because she led into it in a way that, like, again, completely subverting our expectations. And like, yeah, the mature storytelling, I think there's a reason that the fandom tends to skew older, is that we're looking for stories, you know, we like the romance. I mean, we want the romance story, but we want it to feel like it means something and it has like weight to it, you know, like you were saying, that it's not just this kind of superficial, like, let's run around in circles for 50 episodes and never admit our feelings. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. Like she has a more mature storytelling where it's like, yeah, you've got the romance and the meet cute, but like you're really getting into themes of like, you know, expectations on you of how you're supposed to be, and like, can you find happiness and love in the midst of like kind of sucky life situations?
Yeah. Well, totally agree with what everyone has said here. So just no point in repeating it. Just, I agree.
Is it me? Am I going? I
think Chelsey, right? No, so yeah, Rissa, you did the last part. Yeah, that's you.
Okay. Okay, so we pan over to nighttime now, and there's a fire going, and Yua's all bundled up, and there's just maybe it's wind in the trees. I don't know what the Cree is, but it's setting up the scene. And
I
then
think it's like grasshoppers.
Yeah,
That's like winter time though.
I can't do sound effects. I don't know. It's a creature.
I like the branches rubbing together because they're bare.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, or it's the trees or something.
Mm.
Not a significant plot point, but maybe someone will find out.
Woodland
Anyway. Okay, and then we have Ulaan, and he's like, damn, animals are all hiding in this weather. It's nightfall already, because he's probably looking for food. And he says, I hope you're certain that it's safe to be camping out here at night. And then I think that's Yuwa, and then it goes back to Ulaan saying, you'll be fine as long as you stay by the fire. And she's like, I'll take your word for it, because they're still being sassy to each other. So there we go. Then Ulaan stands up, and then Yuwa's giving the eyes, kind of like, what you doing? And then
Her hand, like, conveniently, this is like the sexy pose, the innocent sexy pose, like
Yeah.
this.
she's like, but then immediately it shows him just like laying down, lounging in the next panel. And she's like, wait, you're sleeping now? What if the bandits return? He's like, oh, now you're clinging on to me. He's like, don't. And she's like, don't be shameless. I'm not clinging on to you. And
That's shaking your arm, that's all.
yeah. And she's just like shaking him. And then it says, he says, didn't you say you were very skilled with a bow and arrow? And she's like, do I look like I have a bow and arrow with me? And then he's just like, yeah, you do. He just hands over his bow and arrow. And then she's like, and then he's like, I've been awake and in battle for 5 days and nights now. I don't think I can stay awake for much longer. And he just like gives her, okay, this seems a little odd, right? Like he's like supposed to be the captor, and he's like, here's the weapon. I'm going to bed. I'm tired from the war.
I think he trusts her by now, trusts her enough to not kill him.
Yeah.
But she doesn't. And then he's like, sorry, he's falling asleep, saying, just stay by the fire and don't leave my side. You'll be, falls asleep. And her eyes are just like, what? What has happened? Like, what is happening right now? And she's thinking to herself, awake in battle for 5 days? What kind of beast is he? He's even frowning in his sleep. He must have been fighting this exhaustion all day. And it's funny because it's like concerned, right? Like, oh, like, man, like, how did he make it this far? And then she thinks, I'm not as unreasonable as to deny him the rest he obviously needs, and I'm confident enough with a bow and arrow, but, and she like looks behind her and you see the creepy woods. Of course, everything looks creepy in the dark. And then she's like, I have an uneasy feeling about this place. And then you hear rustle, 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 and it's not it's something different. It's not the creeing. And that's where the chapter ends, because you need to leave it on a creepy like that. But there's something to be said about that, because I just love how she's just concerned about him. Like, it's not unreasonable. He needs to sleep. And then she's like, I can defend us, maybe. And I just think it's cute, because that is like expectations out the window, right? Like the captain, here's a weapon, you defend us. I'm going to bed, right?
You got this.
Okay. I will defend us from something. I just love it. And her thoughts are not what you expect either. She's just like, oh, he's like exhausted from the battle. And like, what? I like it though. It made me laugh.
Well, and
I wasn't impressed. Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, just like, she's like, that he takes her at her word too, where, she could have just been bluffing that she knows how to use a bow and arrow, but he's like, you said you know how to use a bow and arrow, so here you go.
Try not to get us killed.
Yeah. I'm going to sleep here. But like,
Impressed, but
again, the fact that like he doesn't be like, oh yeah, sure, you know how to use a bow, right? It's more like, okay, you said that, so here, like, show me that you can actually do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I don't know about you guys, but I am like impressed that he was up for 5 days and 5 nights. Like, even when I was 17, I don't think I could have done that.
No.
Yeah. I was awake once for 3 days straight and ended up at the ER, so.
What happened? We have to hear the story.
Oh, well, it was not fun, but I had 2015, I had a nervous breakdown and had a series of panic attacks. which culminated in me being awake for 3 days. I mean, I may have slept a little bit here and there, but like the third morning, I was just like, oh, okay, this is not good. But like, you're not thinking straight at that point, and like, I mean, you're so out of it. So yeah, when it's like 5 days, I'm like, really? And you could have like a coherent conversation?
Take down, what was it, 40 bandits?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
took out 40 guys, maybe 40 guys. You rode through the woods. You went hunting for dinner.
Cleaned her cloak.
Yeah, cleaned her cloak. And I'm just
Done
like,
all these chores that he didn't have to. But yeah, 5 days and 5 nights. It's insane.
It's just, that's just attributed to the fiction aspect of this.
Yes.
yes, exactly. The
And a lot of stuff.
magical part of the magical realism.
There you go.
He does daddy energy, right? Like he takes care of her and is like, I mean, daddy in the kinky way, not in the creepy way, just by the way. Like he's just like, he takes care of business. He's like, okay, got you tucked in. Here's your weapon. Going to bed. Okay, bye. Like he takes care of the situation and it's just like done for now.
I also want to point out, like, his shirt is constantly open, and if I was like, and I know it's leather, I guess, but like if I was in the middle of the woods in the freezing woods, I would not be having my shirt open. And Yuwa's, robe was also quite open. Whatever, just pointing it out. It's
Well, if
it's
I
our
looked like that,
pleasure for our eyes.
showing some skin, man. If I was abs, I'd be like, like, oh, let me just go over here, and like, and if I looked like you, I'd just be like, free. Like, I don't know. Maybe both of them are a little supernatural. I don't know. But you're right. Like, they seem to not be reacting to the snowy, cold weather as one would think. But that kind of hints more to Ulaan than anything else. Like, everything he's saying right now is kind of leading up to, like, Ulaan's a little different, right? Besides his red, glowy eyes, he can stay up for 5 days and fight bandits and do all this stuff and still be okay. So it's part of the narrative, but it's funny.
Oh yeah.
Also, they must be pretty hungry. I'm not sure about, like, you see that they're drinking from their canteens, but the fact that they didn't get anything for dinner, I don't think they really ate anything.
Well,
Like,
no, when he comes from the woods, he's carrying like what looks like
what is it,
a
bird?
headless bird.
Mm. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh,
Pheasant.
did he? I thought he didn't have food. Oh no, he does.
Yeah,
He had a pheasant.
Okay, so
because
they
it
ate
looks
something.
like
It just took long for him to get him. So that was my I couldn't see.
Yeah.
It blended. Maybe
Is it-
that was what
It's a
making the
dark animal.
creepy. That's how.
well, that's because like you can see you are like eating something, and then like I think she was licking her thumb because like she's finishing up eating.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. So they weren't drinking.
Okay,
they were
good.
just
I'm glad they got some hot
They
food.
had some food.
I also want to point out the thing for me that I loved was that visual shot of Yuwa sitting by the fire from above. I know I was reading Lily's Patreon, and one of the things she was talking about, this was a long time ago, was how she was trying to work on the visuals were basically kind of like the angle of as though it was a camera, like the different
Mm-hmm.
angles that it could come from. So, that variety gives you visual pleasure, and it's just also beautiful to see, like, okay, now we're seeing it from on top rather than just like what a lot of most comics are. You just have like the frontal as though you're standing there with them. So it's nice to see that diversity. And also the coloring is beautiful, because previously it's a lot of like whites, but now we're getting into dusk or nighttime, so everything's like this very muted blue, navy blue, with the reds and oranges of the fire, and it's just beautiful as usual.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Plus the snow falling, it's just gorgeous.
And you can still see the blood on his like outfit. Like you can still see those details. Like so they're keeping consistent throughout the story. Yes, he did lose an eye in that panel, but it was more for narrative speaking, and you could like focus on his little blushy cheek on this side, and it's creative choice. But I think we've often said, like, even in other podcasts, she does draw like a director, like a movie director. Like she puts it up like you were watching a movie. So you're like, the door comes over from here, and we're going to focus over there, and then we're going to kind of come from this shot, so you can get a feel for like the space that they're working in. Which is why I think this would actually be easier to translate into like animation later, because there's already a lot of that like building of the world. And I much would prefer an animation of both, actually. I would love this. This is a short
Yeah,
one.
well, just both. I have it all right.
Yeah, so it's ready to go. Here's my money raining down from the sky. But
Well, and I mean, she even made a map of like kind of where the camps are in relation to each other, and like where Sean is in relation to like where Yuwa is captured in the woods. Like we see that later in the story, and like I always appreciate that, just like having a sense of like, where are they? Like, how long did this take? Like, one of my big pet peeves in stories is like authors just kind of not figuring out how long things take. Or like, oh, that's 20 miles away. It's going to take this long on foot. So I appreciated that. Like, not only did she create this really strong visual sense of space, but like she actually figured out like the literal space of things, like where things are in relation to each other. It's just that world building stuff that I think makes it's in the background, and you know, she doesn't have to reference it a bunch for the readers, but obviously that's informing like her storytelling, which I always appreciate. And I think it gives more depth and realism to the story to have that stuff kind of running in the background.
Yeah. Also, it wouldn't be a proper ancient battle-y like story without a map. That's like very very typical like fantasy things. They always have a map in the front.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord of the Rings way. You can't have fantasy.
Exactly what I was thinking. Yeah,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, you can't have a journey, like an important journey, and not have a cool map to go with it.
Yeah. Blasphemy, really.
Yeah. So do we have any final thoughts on this episode before we go on to the bonus content? Okay. Okay.
It feels like we've said a lot.
Yeah.
Well, you know, having my first like podcast episode with you guys was like over 2 hours. So anything after that, I'm like, oh, it's fine. Like we barely talked at all.
No. Yeah, it is very different with Asura's Bride. They're not that long, so it's like.
But I particularly
so
came
quickly.
in on like an MPL episode that just had so much going on. And so I had, you know, I've listened to the podcast obviously, but just coming in for my first like being on it was like well over 2 hours. And so now I'm like, oh yeah, it's only been like an hour. It's fine, guys. It's cool.
Mm-hmm. I once told someone who I applied for a job at a podcasting company, and I told them about this podcast, and I mentioned they were 2 hours long, and he was like, his jaw dropped. He was like, what? Hours? I'm like, I'm sorry, we're obsessed. Like,
there's a lot of details to talk about, okay, guys?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Episodes.
And I mean, people are obviously willing to listen to people talk for 2 hours about Midnight Poppyland, and
oh yeah.
Yeah, I checked out I occasionally check out the completion rate for the podcast, and I don't really see a difference between the half-hour podcast, the early ones that we did, and like the longer ones. So I'm like, okay, I guess so far so good. And when I asked the survey several times, and like the majority of people said, I don't care, keep it as long as you want. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, because people I mean, there's those people who do D&D campaigns, and they'll stay for like 3 hours in because, you know, if it's something people enjoy, they'll be in for the ride of it. And again, it's a testament to the material. If this was, again, just like a one and done, we'd be like, they were hot, they were in the forest, then they might have had a moment, the end. Like there'd just be no more to it. Like,
yeah,
and
exactly.
again, they were hot. Like it would just like go back to like the characters, but if you build character into a character, you invest more. So I mean, I love the journey. I honestly, when this was coming out, I wish it was expanded, but I love Midnight Poppyland. So like, it's hard to say like, would I give one up for another? But I mean, I'm just glad we have this. And she was kind of like, this gets finished, unlike a lot of webtoons out there, which, you know, because many reasons may not get finished. So at least this one has a finality to it. And who knows, maybe in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, I think she's mentioned previously that, you know, when Midnight Poppyland is done, because she has, I think she's mentioned maybe 3 seasons possibly of Midnight Poppyland, you know, she would like to go back, it sounds like, and maybe finish or kind of give Asura's Bride the full treatment that she really wanted it to have, which fingers crossed, because like it seems like, you know, there's a lot of authors right now on Webtoons who are finishing up long running series, and it seems like pretty much a lot of them just jump into another story right away. So she would already have a story that has a built-in fan base that would like to see more of them. So, you know, it'd be cool if, like, you know, at some point Asura's Bride gets featured. Like, that would be amazing. So if anybody's listening from Webtoons, you know, just keep that in mind for when Minette Poppyland is done.
Yeah.
You hear the money raining down upon you? You
Yeah,
hear it?
yeah, like,
Do you
I
hear
will
it?
fast pass Asura's Bride. Like, come on, like, we know that's going to happen.
Okay, so I think we'll end this recording now and we'll head straight to the bonus content. Okay, so